Welcome back to another My Hero Academia anime versus manga video, breaking down season 7 episode 9 titled Extras, sharing the same title as chapter 355, referencing All for One and the way he views everyone in the world. Now the episode begins at the end of the Dabi versus Shoto fight, with Burnin getting up after taking a hit from Dabi's flames. The anime here actually changes things quite a bit, as in the manga, while Burnin does get up at the end of the fight, we actually get two panels showing both Shoto and Dabi after Shoto lands his great glacial Eiger to end the fight, as it was important for the story to show Shoto still holding on to his brother, having completed his duty in stopping him, and how painful that responsibility was on his shoulders for him to carry out. The anime doesn't show Shoto's face at all, only adding in Dabi unconscious on the ground and a shot of Shoto from the back. Continuing on, it's announced that Shoto has defeated Dabi, with word being sent out to the command center. As we get an added shot of the command center building, here All Might tears up, knowing how difficult it must have been for Shoto to take down his own brother, and tells Shoto he did a great job, as he spreads the word to the other heroes that Dabi has been taken down. The anime then gives us an anime only scene switching over to Jakku Hospital ruins, where Gigantomachia is being held, showing Mina hitting some villains with her acid shot before telling everyone about Shoto. This scene does replace the panel of the villains and heroes all fighting when the manga first switches over to the Jakku Hospital ruins. Mudman gets some added dialogue as well, saying he expected no less from someone who got in through recommendations, referencing how Shoto was one of the few students to get into UA through a recommendation. He then uses his mud quirk to then trap a bunch of villains in an anime only scene. We then get some added shots of Mineta, some students from Class 1B, Mina, and Mount Lady all fighting off villains. When the villain who killed Midnight back during the Paranormal Liberation War arc begins yapping about the heroes being ready for the villains to take back Machia, we get a ton of anime only additions, such as a shot of Machia rampaging from the PLF war, the sludge villain from the first episode of the anime not only making a cameo appearance, but receiving an anime only scene of him attacking Reiko as Mudman comes in for a save, and Mina fighting off some villains before hearing him talk trash about Midnight. Kirishima also gets a pretty cool anime only entrance, as when Mina notices Midnight's killer, a villain tries to hit Mina with a sneak attack but is folded by Kirishima as he apologizes for arriving late. In the manga, this of course doesn't happen, as Kirishima just arrives late after completing his escort mission. After Kirishima arrives and tells the others to hold the defensive line, we get an added shot of Mineta, some of Class 1B, and Mount Lady all locking in for the fight. Switching over to the Takoba National Stadium, the anime adds in a scene of Tailman taking out a villain. Switching over to the coffin in the sky, the anime adds in a scene of Bakugo fighting off Shigaraki's fingers before giving Shoto props for taking down Dabi. Switching over to the makeshift Troy site, the anime adds a shot of the heroes and villains fighting, as we see Aoyama and Fat Gum are up against the Tartarus escapee, Kuneda. When Kuneda tells Aoyama he will die for tricking All for One, the anime adds in a shot of All for One leaving behind a massive blood trail. Switching over to the General Hospital, the anime adds in a overhead shot of a bunch of villains and heroes fighting, as well as a scene of Koda taking out some villains before being saved by Shoji from an attack by a kaiju-esque Spinner. Hearing the news of Dabi's defeat, Spinner lashes out as he recalls Dabi being strong and having a reason to live where he had nothing. When All for One gives Spinner an extra quirk, the anime adds in a scene showing via his silhouette of Spinner's body further mutating into his kaiju form. Spinner then rallies the villains to focus on the hospital in order to take back Kurogiri. Here the anime adds in shots of Kurogiri, the mutants on Spinner's side, and Rocklock and the police force getting ready to defend the hospital, as Shoji says he's proud to be in the same class as Shoto. Switching back to Kamino, we get added shots of the heroes having taken down the high-end Nomu and the other heroes receiving some medical attention. Shoto apologizes to Ida for stalling his engines, but Ida tells him it's not a big deal, as he knows that Shoto is going through a lot emotionally after the fight. Here we find out that Dabi is miraculously still alive, and something within Dabi's chest begins to glow, hinting that Dabi's fight isn't over just yet, and his body won't give out until he completes his goal. Switching over to Gunga Mountain Villa, word has reached Endeavor. All for One notices the change in Endeavor's face and mocks him for not being there for Toya and putting everything onto Shoto. Shoto. Hawks recalls All For One's weakness, where the anime adds in a shot of the top 3 pros all having the discussion in a warehouse. Hawks points out that All For One's weakness is his mask that acts as his life support system, since thanks to Stain's data, All For One took the life support system with him from Tartarus, revealing that he can't function without it. Hawks then forms a plan where both him and Endeavor will be the ones to hit All For One as hard as possible to break All For One's mask. Endeavor and Hawks versus All For One begins as the duo rushes towards All For One. Endeavor uses the move Hell Curtain to stop All For One's incoming air slashes as Hawks shoots his tiny feathers through the flames to strike All For One. All For One dodges the feathers with ease as he begins to mock Hawks for being predictable with his tactics, making fun of him for no longer being in his prime and using fake feathers to reinforce the ones that he has left after the PLF war. Endeavor comes in fast, keeping the fight close quarters, but also making sure that All For One isn't able to steal either of their quirks and hits All For One with his vanishing fist. But All For One blocks his attacks using his hard flame fan and realizes that he can't reflect the heat passing through with his impact recoil quirk, on top of Hawks not giving All For One an opening to strike back at Endeavor. Here the anime adds in All For One summoning a rod to attack Hawks in order to keep him from striking him from the back. All For One continues his mind games, stating that their timing is off as Endeavor doesn't seem to have his heart in the battle. He tells Endeavor that every hero is fighting desperately on the field while his head is somewhere else. He then states that Endeavor isn't all there because Shoto, his masterpiece, mopped up Toya, his failed experiment. Endeavor rages at this as Hawks tries to remind him of what happened to All Might back in Camino, where All For One also provoked All Might into making mistakes during their battle. All For One tells Endeavor that he had his eyes on Endeavor and his twisted longing for power for a very long time, and reveals that he was the one who found Toya, shocking both Endeavor and Hawks. When Hawks realizes that Endeavor wouldn't have been able to have fought and beat Dabi, the anime adds in a shot of Endeavor and Dabi facing away from each other. As Hawks tries to calm Endeavor down, Endeavor loses it and tries to hit All For One with everything he's got. But unfortunately, this was exactly what All For One wanted and hit Endeavor, taking out a chunk of flesh from Endeavor's side with his quirk monster. Endeavor falls to the ground and All For One turns around and shoots an air wave at Hawks. Hawks, knowing he can't dodge the attack, quickly sends feathers down to Endeavor to save him from falling to his death. Before Hawks gets hit by the air wave, Jiro, riding on Tokoyami's back, protects Hawks with her heartbeat wall, surprising Hawks and All For One. Hawks tells them that they have no place in this fight and to remain back, but Tokoyami tells him that despite being a poor substitute for Endeavor, they work well together. All For One calls them gnats that swarm around One For All. That reminds him of the side characters of the comics he used to read when he was younger with Yoichi, that only existed so the villain of the series could show what he was made of. This pretty much acting as a meta reference to exactly what Class 1A and the heroes are to All For One and the manga in general. Jiro snaps back, saying that he should wait to say that until he actually wins. In an anime only scene, Hawks wonders where Endeavor is currently at as we switch over to Endeavor on the ground. The anime here does change things up just a bit, as in the manga, Endeavor actually is shown to have had a rough landing before thinking about Shoto and Dabi, and the anime doesn't adapt the cursed image of Endeavor's face as he tries to catch his breath. Switching back to Hawks, Tokoyami says that he was sent here as an additional support for the top heroes. Hawks realizes how pathetic he was being about Tokoyami and Jiro being there and asks the hero Tsukuyomi for his help once again, just as he did back during the PLF war, and Tokoyami agrees to help his mentor. All For One thinks to himself that he's wasting his time with these heroes as Shigaraki could be in danger, and knows that his attack didn't take out Endeavor as he'll stand back up as long as he's able to breathe. So the hero's goal right now is to stall until Endeavor gets back up. The anime here adds shots of Endeavor on the ground and Jiro, Tokoyami, and Hawks. Finding the perfect moment to attack, All For One sends out 3 quirk monsters from his tendrils and attacks Jiro and Tokoyami. Hawks sends feathers that keep Jiro out of harm's way, and Tokoyami swiftly dodges all of the monsters sent their way. All For One, annoyed at Hawks, turns as Hawks' feathers hit the back of All For One's mask, while Hawks quickly slices at All For One's mask with his vibro swords. Hawks tells Tokoyami to move however he needs to and he will match his speed. After making sure Jiro was alright, Tokoyami tells her to aim for his mask to crack it with her sound waves. Jiro, shook at almost dying from All For One's attack, thinks about how Deku and Aoyama had been exposed to this looming threat for so long. All For One makes fun of Jiro trembling, thinking this fight was just another lesson at school, calling her an extra as he fuses his quirks, forming a massive quirk cannon, shooting a beam at Jiro and Tokoyami. Hawks quickly uses his feathers, moving All For One's cannon off target, allowing Jiro and Tokoyami to escape, though they both took a great amount of damage, ripping out one of Jiro's earphone jacks and causing Tokoyami to bleed out of his mouth. All For One also made sure to hit Hawks with a rivet stab, injuring and surrounding Hawks with his tendrils. The episode ends with All For One mocking Jiro and Tokoyami for thinking that they could take on the Demon Lord. Now, this episode adapted a total of 2.5 chapters, them being chapters 353, 354, and 355. This episode was amazing, giving some of Class 1A time to shine, especially Tokoyami and Jiro, on top of All For One really showing out and proving to be the menace the series has built them out to be, exploiting and manipulating Endeavor throughout the episode. The animation was also pretty good this episode, and I can't wait for the next one. Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Did they cook with the changes? Let me know everything in the comment section below. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button down below, and if you are new to the Kitoroki channel, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so that you don't miss any My Hero Academia Season 7 breakdowns. With that said, I'll see you all in the next one.